Hello and welcome to the second ever Logo Curious video. My name's Kieran Harrod. You can find me on my freelance website, which is at derby.graphics, and also writing and making videos for Logo Curious. It's a blog about logos and branding and all things like that I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah, we got some feedback from the last video. It was maybe a bit too long, and also I could do with putting a little bit of the pictures a bit larger than just on the screen in post-production, so I'll have a go at doing that and we'll see how we get on. But today I need you to just come in a bit, come a bit closer. I've got something to talk about. I've got to talk about drugs. Yeah, drugs. That is cannabis. Cannabis. In particular, the Canadian government, who have chosen to legalise cannabis across their country. Governments across the world are kind of looking at this again. It's happening in the States, state by state. Cannabis is becoming legal, usually for recreational or medical use. And other countries are looking at it. But Canada, I guess, certainly to what I've picked up on, is the kind of largest and most visible country to have decided to legalise cannabis. And that is going to come in. The law's been passed. It's going to come in the middle of this year, probably July. Now, the central Canadian government have tasked the state governments to organise the distribution and sale of cannabis for recreational use. I don't want to really massively go into whether it should be done or not. I tend to err on the side of caution, but it's happening. It's going to be legal. It is legal in Canada. They're going to be selling cannabis all across the state, all across the country. So yeah, let's not go to that. And I know that there's loads of people in design communities that I'm kind of touch base with who are quite excited, and maybe that's because they quite like cannabis, but actually they're quite excited because cannabis is going to be a new kind of product sector, brand new, and something that doesn't happen very often is that a brand new product category appears from nowhere. It doesn't get siphoned off from somewhere like a range of mid-sized, high-riding cars, and that gets given a name or whatever. It's a kind of brand new, legalised product category. And yeah, designers are quite interested into how they can get involved, and obviously there's potential for lots of design to be involved, especially when you look at something like alcohol, which I think is a good reflection, a good comparison to look at, and not because they do the same things. The effects of alcohol do one thing, and the effects of cannabis do another thing. I guess there are some crossovers, but they're two different drugs that do two different things. But the kind of legal framework is similar. They're going to be, most places are restricting or licensing people to do certain things with the sale of alcohol and cannabis. So there are good parallels kind of there. And if you think about alcohol and the marketing and the branding that goes behind it to sell beer X over beer Y, which in a mass production kind of scale, they often kind of taste the same. Can I tell Budweiser from Miller? Probably not. The big brands put a lot of effort into marketing, into sports events, into a wider range of packaging and the logos and the branding. So it's a really exciting sector, I think, for designers, and some people are really up for it. But there's been a kind of caution thrown at them by the Canadian government. Because, well, a number of reasons which I'll kind of describe in a moment. So yeah, they are passing the kind of control down over to the States. And one state I find particularly interesting, they released some branding that's going to appear on shops that are going to sell cannabis. And that's Ontario. Ontario, for those who don't know, and I didn't know it, here it is, that's Ottawa. They have an interesting licensing system with alcohol. All booze sold in Ontario is sold, or majority of it is sold through a government subsidiary, essentially. The Liquor Control Board of Ontario basically have the monopoly on selling booze in the state of Ontario. That's a really fascinating idea and suggestion. And I think it comes out of some of the prohibition stuff in the 1920s, but yeah, most booze sold in Ontario is sold by the government. Fascinating. And the government, therefore, becomes one of the largest purchasers of alcohol in the whole world. Not only are people not only do people buy from the shops directly, like you and I might go to a supermarket or an off licence, but the wholesale side is a monopoly as well. And there are exceptions for things like so a distillery or brewery can sell their own alcohol directly from a shop, often attached to the distillery or brewery. There's some exceptions for beer. There's a beer store brand that sells beers, and some exceptions for ciders and beers and wines, particularly those produced in the state. In supermarkets, so the government, they control the pricing and everything to kind of, I guess, encourage people to drink in certain ways or responsibly drink or whatever. And their method, essentially, for selling cannabis is going to reflect their method for selling alcohol. They're going to set up their own set of stores in which to sell cannabis to the public, and they're going to control the distribution and sale of cannabis, both in shops, bricks and mortar, and online, and directly from their facilities they set up by the local government, which I think is a really interesting and fascinating way to license stuff, which is what kind of piqued my interest about the subject. Now, they were suggesting to sell the cannabis through the existing range of stores. They've got hundreds of bricks and mortar stores across the country where they in place in communities already, so they were going to sell cannabis alongside alcohol in those stores, but the government decided that it wasn't acceptable to sell cannabis and alcohol under the same roof. They separated the two out, so Ontario have to set up their own shops, and this is what the brand, the logo I was going to talk about briefly today, was all about, which is here we go, Ontario Cannabis Stores. This is the brand of the new stores they're going to set up. They're going to roll them out slowly, starting from July. This is going to be at the header above the door. OCS, so kind of really pared down, simplistic kind of design. It's kind of quite neat. I might grumble about the width of the S compared to the almost purely round O and C. But yeah, it's well constructed. It's kind of minimal. Ontario Cannabis Store, I think it looks nice and neat. It doesn't look too governmenty, I don't suppose. It looks like a kind of funky minimal brand. It's got something going for it, definitely. There's a little kind of grid. You've got to put a grid together when you're creating a logo. It would seem nice grid. But I know a lot of people were disappointed. The people who were looking forward to the kind of festival of design that could have been branding for cannabis products were kind of a little bit set back by. I mean, it's only Ontario. It's only one state who are doing it like this. Although they have 40% of the population, so it's a big. A big part of Canada, but I think it raises the kind of wider question of how, even though it's becoming legal, how much sway or how much give are they going to offer to the kind of cannabis sellers? And Ontario obviously going to be quite strict. It reflects something interesting that Canada also brought out, which was the packaging. That cannabis is going to be sold in, and this is only a draft thing, but essentially they're saying that cannabis is going to have to be packaged in this kind of medical looking, this with warnings on, heading towards the way that cigarettes are kind of packaged, with not trying to make them too tempting or alluring to people. Again, that combined with this kind of simplistic and non-brand creation from the OCS, I think has set a lot of people back and thinking that we're a bit kind of disappointed about the whole structure of how it's going to happen. I do think there's interesting parallels with alcohol. Alcohol has recently been given more restrictions with advertising. Certainly in the UK, you can't have an advert for a drink that sees the protagonist being successful with some partner on the dance floor because they've had drink X or drink Y. You get warnings on labels, and you get warnings at the end of adverts and radio adverts saying drink responsibly. And you've got to put how many units is in the bottle or can or whatever of booze that you've got. All the warnings are saying, they're kind of squishing the freedom that the alcohol sellers have got when they're advertising. And cannabis is kind of starting really kind of compressed. They've not got much freedom at all. More comparatively to the way that cigarettes have been kind of completely quashed design-wise. In Britain, you can only sell packets of cigarettes in one colour packet, and kind of drab olive grey with Helvetica font, and it's got a big warning sticker on it and a massive kind of picture of some horrible disease, and the brand just gets their name. You know, cannabis is starting off that way, but I wonder if it'll kind of be freed up. I wonder if cannabis will start moving across to becoming more free. I guess as the evidence for it suggests that it's no worse than alcohol, or doesn't cause any more social problems than alcohol. Whether that's true or not, we'll see. But I guess I think cannabis will come this way, and alcohol will come this way. They'll have more restrictions, and you'll have to put more kind of warnings on your packaging. So maybe eventually the two will converge in the middle. So there will be more freedom to brand cannabis. But certainly in the minute, certainly with what's coming out of Canada, we can see it's not going to be particularly freeing, or there's not going to be a lot of space for creativity and design in there. And yeah, I know a lot of people who hope that will kind of free up, and we'll see whether that happens or not. Something interesting I might predict is that maybe some of the big alcohol brands will move into kind of cannabis branding. I mean, they won't have maybe the expertise. Who has got the expertise in how to kind of put the stuff together, but maybe they'll kind of buy up some smaller brands, and then actually they'll be selling cannabis as well as alcohol. We'll see whether that happens. I know that in the kind of vaping world, some of the big cigarette brands have got some of the big vape brands, because they can see that they're losing market share to vaping, and the popularity of cigarettes are going down, and we know the danger of it, and vaping seen as a safer kind of thing. So yeah, will the booze brands get involved in cannabis? Time will tell, I suppose. Yeah, we'll kind of see. Interesting thing to keep an eye on. And as these kind of brands do develop, and if it does become free, we'll see whether what logos and what branding are coming out for cannabis. But yeah, that's me talking about Ontario Cannabis Store. So I've not really gone a great deal into the actual logo itself. Yeah, perhaps down the line I'll have some more in-depth reviews of logos rather than overviews of product sectors. But yeah, I think it was an interesting thing to look at. It came up because of this. And yeah, interesting that Ontario do it the way that they do it. We'll see how it develops as time goes on. I really appreciate you spending the time to watch this and listen to me. I've been Kieran Harrod. This has been a Logo Curious video. You can catch me at my website. My freelance graphic design site is derby.graphics, and the Logo Curious site is logocurio.us. I'll put all the links in below. If you've got any feedback, anything you'd like to say, constructive criticism is always welcome. Fire it down in the comments below. Maybe you've got something that'd be worth me looking at and talking about. Fire that down there as well. And yeah, hopefully I'll catch you again soon. Thanks for listening.